You're alive. I am alive.
You're live now.
I'm alive.
Away you go.
Good morning, Richard. Hello. Finally got hold of you together now. March.
Good morning, Stewart.
My guest this morning. Sorry. Good morning, Richard. My guest this morning is Richard Pordef, who was a colleague of mine at University of Sussex way back in the day, and I think he went on to absolutely wonderful, glorious career. And he also told me something about his childhood, about when he was in Hong Kong and Singapore. So he's got quite a lot to talk to us about. So Richard, can I ask you first of all about your very youth and your background? And I know some of it, but then we can move on to what you've been doing much later in your life. Is that okay?
Right. Sounds fine to me. So I was actually born in Shanghai. And the reason I was born in Shanghai is quite interesting. My parents, who met in Shanghai, were both refugees from Vienna. They had left Vienna in 1938 when Hitler executed the Anschluss. And they were both of Jewish origin, though not of Jewish religion. And my father went first to Denmark, where he had some cousins who protected him. But after a while, even Denmark was insecure. So he got on a boat to Shanghai. My mother, on the other hand, went first to the United States because she got a job as a nanny for the Indian Consul General to New York, and was therefore able to get an exit visa from Austria and come to the United States. Now, my mother did not want to stay in the United States, although she was there for just over a year, because her
You were born in Shanghai, right?
Yeah, her fiance had gone to Shanghai. So she traveled alone to Shanghai.
Let me see. Here we are. Here's me. Where are you?
Are you still there? Are we still on?
Yeah.
Now we go. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right. Okay,
So-
let's start
so I was
again.
born-
Now, Richard, can you tell us about your...
Yeah. Go ahead. Shall I continue?
So you were born in Shanghai? Yes, please do.
So I was born in Shanghai.
You were born in
with,
Shanghai?
of Jewish refugees. And I was born just after the war ended, about 3 months after Hiroshima. We stayed in Shanghai until 1949, when the communists took over and pretty much all the Europeans and Americans left China. We first went back to Vienna, but my father couldn't find work in Vienna. So he got himself assigned to Hong Kong as the Austrian trade representative, so representing the Austrian government, and started a business in Hong Kong and really ran that business for about 40 years until he retired. So I grew up in Hong Kong.
I thought it was Singapore. Was it called?
No, nothing to do with Singapore. That's just.
But weren't you in Singapore because your nickname was Singer?
Yeah, but that's because
Singapore.
Yeah, exactly. But it was inaccurate. It was geographically inaccurate. I was actually growing up in Hong Kong, but at Bedales in those days, there wasn't much difference between Hong Kong and Singapore. So that's how I got that nickname.
Right.
Anyway,
Right.
I did go through the schools in Hong Kong and then ended up at Bedales as a boarder coming from overseas, like many of my friends from.
For our viewers, actually, could you explain to our viewers what Bedales is?
Well, yes. First, I should say that most of my friends in Hong Kong ended up going to a British boarding school if they were from Britain. And they all ended up, being working stiffs like myself, whereas the Chinese children who stayed behind in Hong Kong all ended up being billionaires. So it was a rather unfortunate decision of my parents to send me to boarding school. If they'd kept me in Hong Kong, I probably would be a billionaire like my other school friends in Hong Kong, but I'm afraid I missed that one. So Bedales, as you know, is a coeducational progressive boarding school, and my mother was fairly liberal and progressive, so she wanted me not to go to a traditional classical British boarding, single-sex boarding school, but she wanted me to go to Bedales, which was coeducational. I think our link has broken. Hello? No.
You're back, right.
I think we got cut off. Stewart, can you hear me?
Yep,
Yeah.
I can, yeah. Hang on a sec.
What's going on?
Well, I'm just
It's
trying to...
just the internet connection is weak, either with you or with us. But just keep going.
All right. Stewart, are you going to sit down?
Yeah. Oh, now, yeah, okay.
Let me know when you want to
Okay,
continue.
so you were just about to tell us what we... So Beadles is somewhere in the nice countryside, and it's rather different to most posh public schools, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's a progressive
How would you describe?
coeducational boarding school. It was started in the early 1900s by a bunch of Fabian socialists, but it soon became unpolitical and just a liberal boarding school for boys and girls, from middle-class families. And I must say, I was there for 4 years, and I was very happy there. My parents sent me there because they wanted me to grow up in a liberal environment. And from Bedales, I was successful
Yeah.
to get into Sussex University, which is where you and I met, of course.
Okay.
You want me
Okay, and
just
from
to-
there, after
So,
that,
yeah, at Sussex, I read international relations with our good friend Michael
so you did. I
Butler.
remember that very clearly.
Yeah, and that's where I met Michael. And Michael and I were both accepted into programs for graduate students in the United States. So when we graduated, we flew together in an ISEC chartered plane. You may remember an organization called ISEC, which was an exchange,
Yeah.
an organization for exchange students to study in the US. And I ended up going to Columbia University in New York. And Michael went to Columbia Business School. So he had a career in business, and I had a career in government and international relations. So actually ended up working at the United Nations in the office of the Secretary General. And the reason I got the job at the United Nations in the Secretary General's office was that just as I graduated from Columbia, Kurt Waldheim, the Austrian diplomat, became Secretary General of the United Nations, and he needed someone who was bilingual in English and German to work on his staff. So I was actually the very junior, just out of graduate school, person on his staff, and it was a wonderful experience. I spent a couple of years working in the background of the cabinet of the Secretary General until I got another job. I transferred over to a job at UNICEF, and I then spent pretty much the rest of my career at UNICEF.
You're doing UNICEF for a long time, weren't you? But aren't you still doing things like that?
Well, at UNICEF, I had a bit of a checkered career because I
on
started
that one-man
working-
basis. Don't you
Yeah,
get somebody to actually?
I started working in UNICEF on developing programs for children, but I wasn't very good at that or very enthusiastic at that. So I transferred over to the fundraising department and became a fundraiser, which basically I did for the rest of my career. And it was sort of an on-the-job learning experience. So when I retired from UNICEF...
What was that thing about Japan?
Yeah, I'll come to that in a minute. So I was responsible for guiding...
Well, wasn't there something about you going to Japan?
Yes, I was responsible for guiding UNICEF officers around the world and teaching them how to do fundraising. And one of my star pupils was the Japanese chapter or Japanese branch of UNICEF. And in Japan at that time, no one did any fundraising. So we basically opened up in a virgin market and had tremendous success. And in fact, I remember that the Japan office of UNICEF went from $15 million a year to $200 million a year in a period of 5 years. Not very much due to what I was doing, but just due to the fact that no one else was doing any fundraising. And the Japanese public were ripe to be asked for donations to UNICEF. So that's how I ended up working in Japan.
Right,
So,
that's interesting.
when I retired from UNICEF, I continued working in Japan, but not as a UNICEF person, but as an independent consultant. And so I was able to work with a variety of Japanese charities and help them, to achieve fairly successful results by raising funds from the general public. In Japan, I worked for Doctors Without Borders.
Right.
I worked for the World Wildlife Fund. I worked for the UNHCR, the Refugee Agency. And I also started up a branch of Operation Smile, which is the charity, you know, that raises funds for children with cleft lips and cleft palates. So that was a time of rapid expansion among nonprofits. And I'm happy to say that since then, you know, the market has continued to grow, and there are now hundreds of Japanese nonprofits raising funds, and they even meet once a year and have an annual conference where I think they have about 12 to 1,500 participants each year. So I'm still doing a little bit of work in Japan, but I've expanded my business to cover US and European charities as well. Is your screen freezing up, or can you still hear me? Stewart, I think we've got some technical problems here. Are you still hearing me, or shall I wait until you get back online?
Hi, Richard. Sorry, we've broken down.
Oh,
I apologise for this.
okay.
But
Do you want to reschedule for this afternoon?
sorry.
Do you want to reschedule it or do you want to continue it now?
Well, we're trying to carry on now, I think.
Okay, well, I'll exit the studio if you send me another link, or shall I stay in the room?
Sorry.
Should I stay in the studio or shall I exit?
What do you say, sorry?
I'm still in the StreamYard studio. Do you want me to stay here or do you want me to exit?
Is he still in the studio?
Is in Stewart.
I think exit. That's getting another thing.
Do you want another link, Richard?
Well, I'm still in there. I'm still in the room. Shall I wait here for you or shall I exit?
Oh, I think you better. Should we wait for us?
No, because I won't get you back in. The same one.
What's the stuff?
So I think that it's not working properly.
All right.
But I would have to do something better. Got plenty of capacity tomorrow too.
Right.
We've got plenty of space tomorrow. We're not going to squeeze in. He's using Chrome. If he's using Chrome, I said, he can't. Only the Chrome people